all about writing with Ben and Sara.
Welcome to All About Writing, the podcast that covers everything about the world of writing from the inside out. This is episode 55, part 9, on our series on the business of writing. I'm Sara, here with my co-host Ben, who is an award-winning, best-selling author and ghostwriter, editor, and publisher.
And I'm Ben, here with my co-host Sara, who is an award-winning, best-selling author, screenwriter, editor, and TED Talk presenter. And today, we're going to talk about a really, really spicy topic, the truth about sales numbers.
I'm excited about this one because you, with your background in publishing as a publisher, know way more than I do, and I think a lot of our listeners do, about how author sales numbers trickle through in traditional publishing, which is what I think we should focus on. You know, we can probably touch on self-publishing too, but they're very different animals. I almost feel like we should focus on maybe traditional publishing.
Yeah, for sure. Traditional publishing is a very arcane subject that is not well understood outside of the halls of traditional publishing. And I was a publisher for 10 years, and so I worked in the industry. I was connected all through North America and into the UK. And so I learned an awful lot about how sales works, what the process is, and what the numbers are. So that's what we'll focus on. Don't get me started on the process. Let's just talk about the numbers today.
Yes. So my understanding, I mean, do we want to talk about too if an author gets an advance?
Sure.
Let's start
Yeah.
with that. So the numbers, let's say an author gets an advance and then the numbers go from there, correct?
Yeah, and the advance is actually an interesting thing. This is something that new authors who are just getting into the industry need to understand. The advance is money that the publisher pays you up front, usually in several installments, usually part on when you sign, part on when you deliver the book, and part on when it's considered complete with all the editing. Um, and that advance is basically the publisher's best estimate on how well they think the book is going to sell. Because you, as the author, are entitled to 10% of the royalties, of the revenue that comes to the publisher. That's your royalties. And the advance is paying you your royalties in advance, paying you up front, and then your book has to sell enough copies to pay back that advance before you start seeing more money. And as my agent explained to me, as putting on my author hat for a second, most books never pay out their advance. And as a publisher, I learned that this is true. Most books don't. So the advance is probably all the money you're ever going to see as the author on your book, which is why, as my agent said, it's his mission to get me the biggest advance possible. And so he'll talk up why the book is so amazing and how many the publisher's going to sell. But there are sort of some windows of advance. Like if you get paid, say, $5,000 to $10,000 for an advance, that tells you that the publisher doesn't think this book is going to sell that many copies. Like it's enough for them to take, but they think this is going to be kind of a mid-list, maybe a sleeper hit. If you get paid, up to $50,000 of advance, they're putting some money behind this book. They're going to be putting some marketing effort behind it, and they think this book is going to fly. If you get paid more than 50,000, like 100,000, 200,000, this is basically the publisher's decision of what's going to be their bestseller next season. They are going to put huge effort behind this, and so it's kind of an interesting process that the publisher is kind of telegraphing right at the start how well they think your book is going to do. So if you've signed a traditional contract and you've signed for, say, an advance of $20,000, don't be offended, but just go into it with expectations that your book is, they're probably expecting it to be a mid-list book and just hoping that it's going to fly. But that's where most of your money as the author will come. And then it comes down to sales. And that is tricky for an author because it's totally out of your control. You as the author in the traditional world have no ability to sell your book to bookstores. You have limited ability to market it. It really just comes down to what is the publisher going to do. And I'll let you in on a little secret. most publishers have no idea what they're doing when it comes to marketing. They really don't. The big five will just throw money at it, and buy some big splashy ads and pay to have you interviewed by some, websites of people who like your kind of book, and that they will make the effort, but it's still a crapshoot, and they can't guarantee sales unless they can basically arrange for block sales. Like you're you're a major figure in an American political party, and the party is going to buy 10,000 copies of your book. Like then they can guarantee sales, but most of the time they can't if you're just a regular person. So it comes down to luck at that point.
Can you talk a little bit about once your book starts selling, okay, if I'm getting 10%, let's say I didn't get a ton of money, so I'm hoping to start seeing some royalties. Um, how much money do authors, how does the money work? Let's just take one book selling and the book, sells for 15, $20.
Mm.
How does that trickle down then? Can you kind of give that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of people have a piece of this pie in a book sale. I use the number 20 just because it's easy math. Let's say
Okay.
your book sells in the bookstore for $20. The bookstore itself will take eight of those dollars. So 40% goes to the bookstore. That's their cut. Another 15% will go to the distributor because the publisher does not deal directly with the bookstore. The publisher has to go through a distributor who then sells to all the bookstores. So they're just another piece of this. So you're already down to 55%. So $11 has already disappeared before it even gets to the publisher. Publisher on a $20 sale will get $9 back. You, the author, will get 10% of what the publisher gets. Now, okay, I use that as a simple term. There are differences on different media. Like sometimes you get paid more for an ebook, sometimes you get paid more for an audiobook or a mass market. It's not always 10%, but that's kind of the average. And just to keep the math simple, so you, as the author, you'll get 10% of that $9, 90 cents. On a $20 book, you, the author, will get 90 cents. And that 90 cents will go towards your advance. So let's say you were paid, let's keep the math really simple. You were paid $9,000 for your advance. 90 cents, that's 10,000 copies of your book have to sell before you will see any money beyond your advance.
Those numbers hurt so
Mm-hmm.
much.
Yeah,
I
that's why your advance is so important.
Yeah, I see that. Do you think, I mean, do we want to do the math for like an indie publisher? Like let's say you're not self-publishing. Let's say you
Yeah,
go with a mid-range or independent press that's not one of the big five,
yeah.
and maybe you don't even get an advance.
Yes, and that's true. With a small press, it's more common to not get an advance. It depends on the press, how big they are. A lot of really small presses. I don't mean the micro presses, but I mean like just the companies that will put out maybe 25 books a year, 2 books a month type thing. They're steadily churning them out. They have their little niche, their genre they deal with. They often don't pay advances. I have an author friend. He signed with a local publisher here, a well-established publisher. But we were talking about advances, and I told him, what the advance I had, and he said, I think they bought me lunch. I think that was my advance. So fair enough. You don't always get an advance. And if that's the case, then you start getting royalties immediately. So for every sale that happens, you will get it. So if your book sells for $20, you will get 90 cents. So, you know, if your book sells, I don't know, 100 copies this month, then you'll get $90, and they will send you a check for $90. I mean, they'll probably pay you quarterly or every 6 months, but yeah. So that's the kind of money that will trickle in. So don't buy the Lambo just yet, is what I'm saying. The Lamborghini, sorry.
Yes, I got you. No, I agree that, and I've published with the big five and I've published with independent presses. It is nice getting money, from the book sales quarterly. And it just makes you feel like all your marketing efforts, whatever they may be,
Mm.
were at least doing something. You can see a direct correlation to those marketing efforts that way. Um, do we want to touch a little bit on the money of self-publishing then? I mean, it's similar
Yeah,
to an independent press in a way, right? Like when you're working with, let's say, Amazon or something like that, where those are very similar to an independent press.
yes. Self-publishing, the good thing about it is that it's much easier to track because if you're publishing through, Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark, you can log on anytime and you can pull a report and you can see how many books you've sold over a certain period and how much money has come back to you. So the tracking is very, very easy for the individual to do. So you can really keep a control on it. You can see, you're right, if you've done a big promotion, through BookBub or something, you can go in right away. And like within a month, you will know, oh yeah, wow, I sold like 3,000 copies of the book. Now, I sold them for 99 cents each, but whatever, like it's all part of your strategy. So yes, self-publishing, like almost every aspect of self-publishing, the benefit is you as the author have control. And if you like that, and that's what you're going for, then you can really keep a close eye on things, and you can manipulate and maneuver as you want. Um, but the problem is, as far as reporting goes, like for the whole general public to know how many self-published books are sold, there aren't many authors who actually publish their sales figures. Some do because they've got huge sales figures, but the vast majority just quietly keep it. Oh yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think it's interesting that um I think a lot of people go into publishing as an author. I think some people do it because they think because they just want to do their craft, and other people really care about the numbers because they're hoping to make it their side gig, or they're hoping to quit their day job and make it a full-time job. And I think it's important to really break down those numbers so people can go in with their eyes open.
Yeah.
Because it's worse, it's not disheartening, but to find out like, oh, my book is on the shelf at Barnes& and Noble for 25, $30, but I'm only gonna make
Yeah.
72 cents.
25. Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing. And yet I get it, like the publisher is taking the risk, the publisher is putting money up front, the publisher is paying for the printing. They're paying for those colored photos or the design on the jacket. They're paying for all of that. But
Yeah.
it's what blows my mind is like the distributor taking such a huge chunk. That's crazy. 15% just to distribute the books.
Yeah, yeah, it's a funny industry, but it's got a lot of layers built in, and most bookstores will not deal with publishers directly. They don't want to because there's too many publishers, right? There's hundreds of publishers, and if every little bookstore had to receive a sales pitch from every publisher, they'd never get anything done. And
That's
so yeah, I mean, so like from a big picture efficiency point of view, I see it. It also, as a publisher, as a small press, I didn't then have to go around to the hundreds of bookstores, and make a pitch to every single one of them. I didn't have time for that either.
right,
The
right,
problem
right.
is with distributors is they have hundreds of publishers coming to them. They can't possibly pitch every book that every publisher is giving them. So the
Right.
distributor then chooses, like they'll tell each publisher, okay, you've got 10 books. What's your top two? Okay, I'll consider those. I'll push those two. But then they've still got like 400 top two books they have to choose from. They're going to whittle that down to what they think. So a lot of traditionally published books don't really get a pitch to the bookstores. They just don't because there's too many of them. The publisher and the distributor both will sort of pick their favorites of what they think is going to fly, and the bookstore won't even really know about the other 380 books that are there. I mean, there's a catalog they can look for. They can sort of leaf through them if they have the time. But then they're making their choice basically on the cover, the title, maybe the author name, maybe
For
the
the genre.
subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, but um, yeah. So it is. It's more and more demoralizing the further and further you get into this industry, but it's the truth. Um, Now, one important thing we didn't tell you about self-publishing is how much money the author gets back, because it's very different.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Because the only other entity in the sales chain is the online seller, like Amazon or Ingram Spark. and there'll be the cost of printing the book if it's a paperback or a hardcover that's been printed, and that it's done print on demand. And they just basically just, as soon as you sell the book, they take the cost of the printing off of that. So if it is if it's a printed book, you'll probably, as the author, net about 40% of the cost, like of the price will come to you. So the numbers are better. So because you have paid your money to make this book, you will get more money back for each one that you sell. So the margins are much better.
That makes sense in terms of, and I mean, so in a way, like Amazon is an independent publisher in terms of like the percentages coming back.
Yeah, they're more of a distributor actually. Yeah, you as the author are the publisher because you're the one who pays the editor, who gets the cover design, who you put the book together. That's the publisher's job is. Um, and then the distributor is the one who takes it to the marketplace. And for the traditional industry, the distributor takes it to the bookstores. In the self-publishing world, Amazon or Spark take it to the online selling, which is Amazon, iBooks, Kobo, all those things. So yeah, really, they're more the distributor, and they do take a bit of a cut on top of the print-on-demand costs, but it's comparable to what a distributor would take.
That makes sense. Um, okay. So, what did I not think to ask about in terms of the money? Because I'm sure
Well,
you know more than like the truth about
yeah,
serial numbers. You know more of these truths than I even know to ask.
yeah. Well, here's the big one. This is what I get asked a lot: is how many books do you sell? Like how many copies actually sell? Um, because when you go into a bookstore, you'll often see, the big displays and, 1 million books in print is what they'll say, right? But you think that means 1 million books sold. Well, it doesn't
Right.
actually. It means they printed a million and they're hoping they're going to sell a million, but that's a different thing. But because we think of books, we think of the superstars, J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, etc.,
Hmm.
the big superstars and how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of copies of books they've sold. Most authors tend to think that books sell really easily and the numbers are big. And yeah, I'll sell the first 10,000 and then we'll see how it goes. That's not how it works. Traditional publishing, so this is when you go through a traditional publisher, through the distribution system, into bookstores. The average traditionally published book sells between 2,500 and 3,000 copies in its lifetime.
Okay.
And that number has been 2,500 for a long time, but I was just in preparation for this, did a little, current research to see if the numbers had changed. And I saw 3,000 a couple of times. So thing is, no one really knows. And this is part of the problem is that it's very, very hard to actually track how many books sell because the publishers don't tell people this. Uh, most authors won't talk about it. And the only way you can really track it, there's a company called BookScan, and they track a lot of book sales. But even now, still, they only do bookstores, so they don't track ebooks, they don't track library sales, they don't track author website sales, and they don't track sales from any store that isn't participating in BookScan. So BookScan is a decent metric for being able to say this is about how many books sell. The true number is probably a little higher, but we don't know for sure. So the accepted wisdom is 2,500 to 3,000 books is the average.
Okay.
And that average includes the Harry Potters and the Hobbits of the world, which have sold millions of copies. So to get an average of 2,500 to 3,000, you've got a lawful lot of books that sold less than that. And this is true. I know this as a publisher, and I know it from talking to other authors who've been in the traditional world. Yep, some books, they will sell 300 copies. Like a traditionally published book will sell
Like
300
total in your
copies.
life, and it's just for
Yep.
total.
Yep. Yeah, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, if the book is not one of the selected few to get pushed to the bookstores, um, and bookstores themselves are ruthless when it comes to books on their shelves. Um, a very, very well established and popular bookstore here in my hometown called Monroe's, I asked them once, how many copies does a book have to sell in order to earn a spot on your shelf? It's two, two a month. if a book sells two a month, that's good. We'll keep it. Two a month. And that's worth keeping, which suggests an awful lot of books don't even sell that. And a bookstore will give you 30, maybe 60 days on the shelf. And if you haven't been selling enough, you're gone. And you're making room for the next crop of books. So most traditional books, they get their launch and they get a burst of marketing with their launch, and then they're done. And the publishers moved on, the bookstores have moved on, the distributors moved on. That book is on a backlist and it will never, ever, ever be pushed again. And it's basically dead. Self-publishing has the advantage in that you can relaunch your book whenever you want, and you can put a new cover on it, you can put a new title on it. You can always try again. Traditional publishing doesn't work that way, and the best they can do is, let's say they launched it in trade paperback. It didn't do well. Well, they can launch it in mass market paperback. Put a new cover on it, mass market, so it's cheaper price. Try again, and that sometimes will work, but you don't often get a second shot with traditional publishing. So 2,500 to 3,000 copies sold in its lifetime. Now, this depends also on the publisher. Like one of the big five, big New York publisher, if a book sells less than 50,000 copies, it's a disaster and they're done with it, right? Whereas a small press, like I'll tell you, at my company, if we sold 5,000 copies of a book, yes, it's champagne and chocolate cake all around, because we have different standards and different expectations and different overheads. So for a small press, 3,000 copies sold, it's not bad. It's not bad. But for a New York press, oh well, we tried. On to the next one. And so they go. Yeah. So that's the traditional average sales. And for self-publishing, the news is a little grimmer. The average
Wow.
self-published book, again, it's hard to know for sure,
Yes.
but based on reporting, 75 to 150 copies. That is what the average self-published book will sell. Now, this includes a lot of books that people made no effort to try and sell, like writing a personal memoir for their family, or, just a collection of local bird photos that only a dozen people want to buy. Like, there are lots of passion projects which really don't want to sell more than 75 copies. They'll be thrilled if they sold 75 copies. But a lot of authors would like to sell more than that, and like you said, would like to make it their side gig or maybe even their real job.
I mean, you can dream.
Yeah. So with self-publishing, I mean, the odds are against you. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't. There are lots of things you can do right to get you way above that average. But the vast majority of self-published books sell, less than a tenth of what traditionally published books sell. So these are the hard numbers.
I mean, the thing is, this is a sobering episode, right? We're not sitting here with rainbows and you can do it. These are just true data facts, right? Like, it's just, that's it. These are the average numbers. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because you never know. You could have that zeitgeist moment and you could be
Yeah.
the one who, it blows it out of the park, or at least you have a benchmark for like a goal. So not to sell 10,000 copies, but to sell 400 copies in the lifetime of your book. I mean, there are realistic goals to take out of this.
Yeah.
And also, in a way, too, to remind our listeners that even if these numbers feel grimmer than you were wanting to hear, it doesn't mean don't publish or don't pursue your dream. I mean, writing is in our blood if we're doing it. It's something you do because you want to, not because you can't view it as a get rich quick scheme.
No, no, you're right. It's something that we're compelled to do. We're going to do anyway, and
Right.
we do even if no one was ever going to pay us. So, man, maybe somebody will pay us a little bit. That's cool.
Right.
Um, and yes, it is very satisfying. It's very gratifying to have people buy your book and love your book and think, wow, I really am, doing something worthwhile here. It is a great feeling. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I was thinking the same, Sarah, as I was talking. You're like, oh man, I'm really just killing everyone's spirit here. Please don't take it that way. It is possible to beat these averages, and it's possible to do all kinds of things better than most other people do. That's a discussion for one of our marketing episodes, but um, it is possible. But these are the numbers, and I want everyone to go in with eyes wide open. If you think that you're just gonna, a piece of cake sell 10,000 copies, no, that's not how it works. in either industry.
Right. I mean, sobering, but truth, and you and I talk about all of it. So, I mean, um, is there anything I forgot to ask about that you want to mention? Any final words before we put the nail in the coffin on this less fun
No,
episode?
yeah, no, I think that's it. I mean, the numbers are sobering, but as long as you go in with your eyes wide open, then I think okay, you're ready for that,
Right.
and then I think you can tackle it. And when you do beat that average, you can go, yes, I rock,
Yes.
and that's what we're aiming for here, is to make you feel good.
Perfect. Yes, we are. We're here to make you feel good, and that's our goal, even if it means just going in with your eyes open. And on that note, I guess that's our show for today. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss these chats full of lots of industry information that you won't get very easily any other place. Please feel free to leave a review, which helps us a lot. And don't forget, you can find Ben at bennettrcoles.com, as well as on Facebook and on Instagram.
And you can catch up with Sara at saradaman.com and on Instagram. Thanks for joining us today. Please reach out if there are any topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll see you again when we next chat all about writing.
This has been All About Writing with Ben and Sara.